Welcome to The Critique. Today, we're diving into a script from the Quantum Nexus channel that tries to braid together quantum mechanics, nervous system regulation, and the spiritual practice of surrender.
Mm-hmm. It's a fascinating piece, but it's a very ambitious mix.
It really is. And we have some pretty significant feedback on its structure and tone. So let's just jump right in.
I'm ready.
It's a tricky thing, trying to marry hard science with something as esoteric as spirituality. It's a tightrope, and right now I think that wire is shaking just a little bit too much.
Absolutely.
So one of the first things that jumps out is how the script uses all this scientific language. Terms like quantum superposition, waveform, observer effect, and they're everywhere.
They are, but I think the real issue is how they're being used. The script relies so heavily on scientific terminology to, validate these spiritual concepts, and that creates a pretty big risk of alienating listeners who actually know the science.
Right, because the author isn't just using them poetically, are they? It's presented as fact.
Exactly. There's a line that literally says, "This is not metaphor, this is quantum mechanics." And then it claims that, letting go of control actually creates quantum superposition.
That's a very bold claim.
It is. And by applying these subatomic principles to, human psychology, to your job stress or a breakup, you risk losing all credibility. It creates what I'd call a validity trap.
A validity trap?
Yeah. It's where you invite scrutiny you just can't withstand. If a listener knows anything about physics, they know the observer effect in a lab is not the same as ignoring a text message to, change reality.
Mm-hmm.
So if they reject that scientific premise, they might just throw the whole spiritual message out with it, which is a shame because the core message is actually quite beautiful.
Okay, I see that. So the suggestion here is to maybe reframe all that science as more of a powerful metaphor, an analogous framework rather than literal proof?
Precisely. That way, you keep the intellectual vibe without inviting people to poke holes in the physics. For instance, instead of saying the observer effect applies to your entire existence, you could try something like, we can view our attention through the lens of the observer effect.
Ah, okay. It's a subtle shift.
It's huge, though. It changes the contract with the listener. You're not teaching them bad physics. You're giving them a useful model for their mind.
And what about that part on quantum superposition?
Right. Instead of saying the listener is literally creating superposition, you could phrase it as entering a state of psychological possibilities that's similar to a quantum superposition.
Got it.
And that line, it's physics, maybe change that to something like, it's a principle of resonance. You keep the mystical feel, which is clearly the brand, but you're not making claims that are, easily debunked in the comments section.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's pivot to the structure, because the script actually has some really compelling, grounded biological evidence in it, but I feel like the placement is a little off.
Oh, I found that fascinating. The script spends the entire first half in this repetitive loop of abstract spiritual metaphors before it ever grounds the argument in anything tangible.
You're talking about the trees cracking their bark, stars imploding.
Yes, all that. It's poetic, sure, but you're asking the listener to just trust the spiritual why for a really long time before you give them the biological how. The best evidence in the whole piece, the sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system, it's buried way in the back.
So the suggestion is pretty straightforward then.
I think so. Move that entire section about the nervous system and fight or flight way, way earlier in the script. Use the biology to validate the spirituality. Don't save it for the end.
Hook the logical brain first.
Exactly. Imagine if, right after the opening hook about reality, you immediately explained why their body is physically reacting the way it is. You'd build so much trust.
That would totally change the flow. Instead of trust me, here's some science, it becomes here's what's happening in your body, and here's a spiritual framework to work with it.
Precisely. The script mentions pain at the very beginning. Connect that pain directly to the biology of stress, the cortisol, the adrenaline. Make that discomfort a tangible, physiological event they can recognize. That grounds the entire experience.
I want to switch gears a bit to the user engagement stuff. The script tries to be interactive, which is interesting, but I wonder if it's backfiring.
It really might be. It keeps interrupting this deep spiritual flow state with calls for YouTube engagement. Commenting, subscribing, and it frames them as anchoring a frequency, but It can really break the spell.
It's the constant scroll down and type this.
It is. It asks the listener to type out phrases like, I release what no longer serves me. And look, the rhetoric is clever, I'll give him that. Subscribe not to this channel, but to this frequency. It sounds great.
But
But you're trying to induce a meditative state, and you're asking someone to pick up their phone, open an app, deal with a keyboard, read other comments. It's just so transactional. It makes the spiritual advice feel like a pretext for farming engagement.
okay, so what's the fix?
I think you either save all those calls to action for the very end, or you make them physical and offline.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, so look at that part where it says, scroll down to the comments and type these exact words. What if instead it said, say this out loud where you are right now, or even write this down on a piece of paper next to you?
That keeps them in the moment, in their body.
Exactly. And the subscription ask happens twice. Just consolidate that into one clear ask in the conclusion. If you've genuinely helped them reach a calmer state, they'll want to subscribe. You don't need to, interrupt the surgery to ask for a 5-star review.
That's a great way to put it. All right, let's talk about tone. My sense is that the script has a very, very specific person in mind.
I wonder about that too. The voice seems to assume the listener is coming from a place of trauma or desperation. It's all about white-knuckling survival.
It assumes the listener is suffering.
It does, yeah. It uses phrases like the pain you're experiencing and trauma response masquerading as spirituality. It's creating this persona of someone who's broken. But what about the high performers?
Right.
The people who are successful but are just looking to optimize their flow state or tap into their intuition. They're not necessarily in pain. So when the script says, I know you're hurting, they might just tune out and think, actually, I'm okay. This isn't for me.
So the suggestion is to broaden that emotional address, make it about expansion and optimization, not just repair and relief.
Exactly. Acknowledge that gripping too tightly happens in success just as much as it does in failure. For example, when it asks, what are you holding on to? The examples are all negative, a bad job, a failed relationship. Why not add a positive stressor, like the pressure to maintain your success, or the need to be the one who has all the answers? That's a huge one for successful people.
That shifts the whole frame from therapy to coaching.
Perfectly put. And maybe adjust that survival mode language. Control isn't just a trauma response. For many successful people, it was a strategy that worked for a long time, until it didn't. That's a much more inclusive angle.
Okay, which brings us to our last big point, the so what. We have the why, we have some of the science, but we have the action.
That's the crucial question, isn't it? The script is fantastic at describing why you should release control, but it's really abstract on how you actually do it in a moment of real tension.
It just says things like soften or breathe.
Right. Soften, breathe, trust. Those are outcomes, they're not processes. If my heart is racing because I'm in that sympathetic activation state the script talks about, telling me to just trust is, well, it's useless. I physically can't get there from here.
There's no bridge.
There's no bridge. It tells you to stop fighting the flow, but gives you no tool to actually do that when you're caught in the rapids.
So the suggestion is to add a specific micro-practice, a visualization, something to give the mind a job to do while it's trying to let go.
Yes, exactly. And you can build on the metaphors that are already there. The script mentions trees crack their own bark. That's beautiful. So turn it into an exercise. Say, close your eyes. Imagine your tension is that rigid bark, and your breath is the wood slowly expanding from within. Feel the crack.
Now that's something I can actually do.
Right? Or, for the nervous system part, don't just say breathe. Give a specific technique. Say, exhale for 6 counts, inhale for 4. A longer exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system.
That's very actionable.
And one last thing. Instead of an abstract command like choose to soften, give a physical cue. Drop your shoulders away from your ears. Unclench your jaw right now. If you change the body, the mind has to follow. You can't just talk it into submission.
Okay, that brings us to the end. Let's do a quick recap for the listener.
For sure. It really comes down to credibility and usability. So first, reframe the quantum physics as a metaphor, not a literal fact. Resonate like a waveform. Don't claim you're collapsing one.
And second, move that biology, the nervous system science, right to the front. Hook the skeptic's logical mind first.
Then, on engagement, get rid of those transactional interruptions. No more asking people to comment mid-meditation. Make the actions somatic and offline, or save the asks for the end.
And finally, the tone and the actionability.
Right. Broaden the tone beyond just helping people who are broken. Speak to the high achievers, too. And most importantly, give them something to physically do. Tell them to drop their shoulders. Tell them how to breathe. Make surrender a physical act, not just a philosophy.
An excellent summary. We would absolutely love to see this script again once those analogies are tightened and the somatic practices are woven in. It really has the potential to be a powerful piece of content.
I agree. The core message is beautiful. It just needs to get out of its own way, which, ironically, is the whole point of the script.
That's it for this critique. We look forward to seeing the next draft.
Indeed. P. Grading.